Kings Island is in huge trouble. For a while, Kings Island has been regarded as one of the best amusement parks in the country. However, over the past 5 years or so, something weird and sad has been happening to this park. Ever since purchasing the park back in the late 2000s, Cedar Fair would consistently pump massive investments into this park in the form of amazing new rides and attractions, including some of the most elite and incredible roller coasters in the world. The last major coaster the park opened was way back in 2020, and there doesn't even seem to be a coaster planned for this park in the near future. Kings Island has consistently been one of the top performing parks in the Cedar Fair chain, but now with the Six Flags merger, it seems Kings Island may be taking a backseat for the next while. Is Kings Island in huge trouble? Is Cedar Fair giving up on one of their best parks and one of their top performers to focus on some new Six Flags properties? When Cedar Fair originally purchased Kings Island in 2006, they immediately began rapid investment into the park. 2007 brought a relocated Vekoma flying coaster Firehawk, which later closed in 2018, and 2009 brought the incredible new B&M hyper coaster Diamondback, which opened to rave reviews, still being rated one of the best hyper coasters in the world today, over 15 years later. It took a few years before Kings Island would open their next coaster, but in 2014 they'd replace Son of Beast with Banshee, which would instantly become one of the most beloved B&M inverted coaster to ever open. Just 3 years later, the park opened one of the best wooden coasters in the country, Mystic Timbers, and another 3 years after that, they followed it up with a massive B&M Giga coaster, Orion, in 2020. Kings Island was consistently getting massive new thrill machines every 3 to 5 years ever since Cedar Fair bought the park, and the park was slowly becoming one of the top parks in the country, with some even naming it the best amusement park in the United States. Fast forward to today, and Kings Island is still doing pretty well for itself, but it no longer feels like it's as high on the list in the chain's priorities. In the last 5 years, Kings Island has received a small family coaster, and there is no planned new coaster for the 2026 season either, making it a minimum of 7 years between the park's latest major thrill coaster and their next potential one. Kings Island also ripped out Vortex in 2019, and it's already been 6 years without a replacement. Now that there are 26 parks in the chain, is the new Six Flags just ignoring Kings Island? I think there's a very simple thing that's going on here with Kings Island. The park is one of the most successful parks in the chain and has one of the best coaster lineups in the country. When Cedar Fair needed to focus on some of their other parks over the last few years, it was very easy for them to put Kings Island on the back burner for a while. The park has a very consistent attendance rate and performs well even without insane major investments. Kings Island may be one of the few parks in the country that could go 6 years without a major new thrill coaster, and it just won't affect the park's attendance at all. The quality of their attractions in their lineup is so elite and top tier that if the chain would take a short break from the park, they'd still be okay. That's how good of a job Cedar Fair did with this park over the last 20 years, building it into an elite park that can sustain itself for a long period without massive investments. I think we're going to see Kings Island wait a little bit before their next major coaster, and it may not even come in 2027. I also think we may see this park suffer a bit in the first few years of the new Six Flags merger, as Six Flags is forced to focus on some of their other major parks that desperately need investment. For example, Great Adventure is kind of in a pretty bad situation with the removal of Kingda and a bunch of other rides, and the park's attendance was already the worst it had been in decades before they removed all those rides. Great Adventure will need a lot of investment over the next few years, and it will make sense from a financial point of view to build that park up quickly in the short term and take a break from an already successful self-sustaining park like Kings Island. So to answer the question of whether I think the new Six Flags chain is abandoning Kings Island, I think I'll say no, and I don't think Kings Island is in such big trouble long term either. The next few years though may be a small rough patch for the park, but in the grand scheme of things, I think Kings Island will be just fine, and if anything, I believe they'll continue down an even better path than the one they've been on the last 20 years. Six Flags already announced that Kings Island is getting a family thrill attraction in 2026, and though there's a good chance 2027 is the year they get their new coaster, I'm leaning more now on 2028. I think Six Flags chain will focus 2026 and 2027 on aggressive investments building up the legacy Six Flags parks and bringing them up to the Cedar Fair standard before starting to get back to a normal investment plan for the entire chain starting in 2028. I think at that point, Kings Island will likely be at the top of the list for a new coaster, and I'm betting 2028 is going to be an epic year for Kings Island. As for what they could get, I think a B&M dive coaster is something you can't rule out. It'll already be well over a decade since Cedar Point opened their dive coaster, and I could easily see Kings Island get a larger and more unique dive coaster. The B&M Hyper and Invert coaster models made their way into almost every major park, and it seems the dive coaster may be headed down the same path. If a B&M dive coaster isn't what they go for, then I would think a launched wing coaster or even a surf coaster are possibilities. Cedar Point's wing coaster will have opened long enough before this, and Cedar Point does not have a launch, which will make the two different enough from each other. That's all I can see Kings Island going with from B&M, but there's another way I can see this going. A Mack Extreme Spinner would do wonders at Kings Island, and it's personally my favorite option for the park's next coaster. I think it's a perfect fit, and I think it would give the park a true standout coaster that's a true elite #1 ride. Mack Rides is a manufacturer Cedar Fair is definitely not scared to work with, and they're the ones in charge of Six Flags now, so I can easily see this happening. Then there's the elephant in the room, which is Vekoma. I just can't rule out Vekoma as they continue to dominate more and more year after year. A multi-launch coaster from Vekoma would be a perfect fit at Kings Island, and it's definitely a possibility. I happen to like Intamin's multi-launch coasters better, and I don't know if Intamin will ever be on the table with this chain again, but it would be awesome if they could make it happen. Imagine a 250-foot Intamin multi-launch coaster at Kings Island. This would be insane, and it would also be an easy standout #1 attraction. Of course, there's always RMC up in the air, and maybe Kings Island can do something to avenge Son of Beast with a massive hybrid from RMC. All these options are great options, which is exactly why I'm very excited for the future of Kings Island. Hopefully we see a new coaster here soon, maybe even as early as 2027. But even if we have to wait a couple of years, I am extremely optimistic for the future of this park. Kings Island was always a perfect park with everything they did, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. I look forward to the exciting future this park has down the line, and sometimes good things in life require a bit of patience. But when they finally come, they are well worth the wait. Kind of like the crazy documentary I worked on recently. I spent an entire year working on an awesome documentary of the entire story of Universal versus Disney, and it's my best video on the channel by far. Click here to watch it now or save it to your watch later. It's not a video you're gonna want to miss, and I'm really proud of how it came out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one here on Looping Thrills.